I gotta ask you. I know there was talk. I even talked to Eric Brown, and I know you heard Adrien Broner call out Floyd. Before that, though, I know that you said you wanted to fight with him. Is that still something that you want to do? Rematch Adrien Broner again before he fights Floyd?
Well, they talked about Adrien coming back to the welterweight division, and I don't know that you can just jump back into a Floyd Mayweather fight off of an Ashley Theophane fight. Ashley gave an honest effort, but this isn't one of the top welterweights in the world or anything like that. You come back to the welterweight division, you should at least have to earn the fight with Floyd Mayweather, if in fact that is any of the plans, which I don't know if they even are. But we talked about, Adrien talked about manhood in the post-fight interview, and talked about how Floyd has to come see him if he's a man because the stuff that he talked. Well, I think a man handles his business, and I think Adrien, more than anybody knows, we have unfinished business in the ring, from a competitive standpoint. Honestly, I always wish Adrien the best, and I always wish Adrien luck in anything he does, but at the end of the day, we're both competitors, and, that was a fight, I think, looking back. I mean, I wanted to rematch right away. I didn't get it. But looking back, I think everybody who was involved on the business side of it will look at it as it was a mistake to not make that rematch because, our careers kind of veered off and spiraled out of control after that. I ended up beating Judah and then lost the Porter fight, and my career kind of spun out of control, took a tailspin. And Broner took the L with Maidana 6 months later and has only won when he's lowered the level of opposition since then. Anytime he's raised the level of opposition of Maidana and then Porter, he's lost pretty convincingly. So I think I know I wanted to rematch right away back 3 years ago, but I think anybody who was involved on the business end of that fight will probably be able to admit, with hindsight being 2020, that it was a mistake not to make the immediate rematch right away. Because you kind of hurt both of our careers in that way. I think a fight with me and Adrien Broner will always be close. I think a fight with Adrien Broner will always be competitive. I don't think, I think it'll always be a razor close decision. I don't really see any of us being hurt by fighting each other. Now people will say, "Oh, Paul, you're not the same fighter. Look at what you look like against Garcia." I have to admit, not making excuses aside, and this is not an excuse, but as a fighter, when you take a L, you have to look at what you did right and what you did wrong. The Garcia fight, I was coming off of getting cut in training camp for the Daniel O'Connor fight that I had scheduled. I took the Garcia fight probably 2 weeks after suffering that cut. So I had a fresh cut on my eye, and I felt like I wasn't in shape because I had been training. And I said, you know what, let me take this Garcia fight. It's good money. And I feel like I'm in shape. I may not be able to spar a lot, but I'm in shape. And, that's the approach I took. I was pretty confident in my ability to do that. But, hindsight, again, being 2020, my career has always been heavily reliant on very violent, heavy sparring. And I couldn't do almost any sparring at all in that camp. I had about 25 rounds of sparring for the whole training camp, no more than 5 rounds in one clip on any given day, 25 or so total. So it wasn't the sharpest I could have been, and people are going to say, oh, well, for some guys, maybe they don't rely heavily on sparring. I've always relied heavily on sparring. My target amount of rounds per camp is 125 rounds, per training camp, So I got about 25 rounds for that camp. And that's not to make an excuse for that. You can't fight a world-class fighter like Danny Garcia because Danny Garcia is a world-class fighter. You can't fight a world-class fighter like Danny Garcia under those circumstances. Now, it's not an excuse because I made that choice. I decided to take the fight, and I thought I could perform under those circumstances. But, of course, I watched the fight. I'm making a miss, especially early on, but I'm not reacting very well on the counters or whatnot. I'm not reacting, and that's kind of coming from the non-sparring, not being able to react to the punches coming your way the way you want to, even if you're, slipping them and making them miss. And that's a shame, but, I made that choice. Danny continues to be a great fighter. I don't have any regrets about it because, I was paid for the fight, and I made that choice. But all I ask is that, people don't judge me on that fight, and that's why I took the fight after that. When I thought I was on, I said, what, am I really going to be able to really leave the sport off of this performance? Or am I always going to wonder what if,
Mm-hmm.
So, I took a couple extra fights. I won 12 rounds in December, and for that fight, I really had a pretty good camp. I had a good amount of sparring and whatnot for the fight in December in London. And, I won 12 rounds, and I felt pretty sharp. Listen, have I been sharper? Absolutely. But if anybody goes and watches that fight, and I'm sure you can find it on YouTube, it wasn't a war against a world-class fighter, but it wasn't against a bad fighter either. And, I won 12 solid rounds. I looked slick. I had my reflexes working pretty sharply. And I feel like, judge that fighter, the fighter that actually, got to at least have a real training camp. I'm not saying I'll beat everybody in the world off of a real training camp, but what I am saying is I still have enough in the tank to take on Adrien Broner and give it a real fight. And I think since me and Broner fought, I'd say it's about 60-40 the public opinion on who really won that fight, and 60-40 in my favor. You know, for the most part, more people think I won that fight than think I lost that fight. But, you know, it is what it is. I don't mind it as long as I get a chance to at least have the get back, you know. And again, from a competitive standpoint, from a business standpoint, we had the highest rated show on boxing event on Showtime in 2013. I think the fight always sells, and me and Adrien are the best trash talkers in boxing. So I think that always sells, and you know, why not? You know, that's all I'm saying. And we'll see what happens.